Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another episode of Film Review with me. That's not really the title of the series at all. I just felt like starting the video a different way than I normally do. Hey, everybody, today we're going to be reviewing Schindler's List, which is a 1993 movie, which is considered a modern classic. It won Best Picture and Best Director at the Academy Awards. It was also nominated for Best Actor, Best Supporting Actor, and a whole host of other things. Won a bunch of other things too. Those are just the ones that popped up in my mind off the top of my head. I watched this movie on Netflix for free in the US right now. So currently, if you have that subscription, you can watch Schindler's List for free. And yeah, let's get into it. Obviously, this movie is very well known and well regarded. Um, if you haven't seen it before, you should definitely go out and watch it. It is very good. I didn't really know what I was going to think of it going in. I thought there was a chance I might find it boring or that it would be overrated. Definitely not. I very much enjoyed it. Today I'll be breaking down the movie by acting, writing, direction, cinematography, and editing. The last three, direction, cinematography, and editing, are all very intertwined for this movie. So, um, like when I talk about any of those three, they're not going to be like super distinct. There'll probably be a lot of overlap between the three. But I'll start off with the acting first. So you get three main performances here from Liam Neeson in probably his first major role, you'd say. Same with Ray Fiennes in one of his first major roles, and Ben Kingsley, who is probably the most known actor on this shoot. Respectively, Neeson plays Oscar Schindler. You have Ray Fiennes playing Amon. In English, it looks like Goth, but I think it's Girth in German, or Gar. I don't know how to say it, so I'll probably just refer to the character as Ray Fiennes, actually. And then with Ben Kingsley's character, his last name is Stern. I don't know how to pronounce his first name. It's a Polish name, I believe. So interestingly, I think the acting, although strong in this movie, isn't even the strongest part. Even though you get some iconic performances, I'd say um, probably career bests from Liam Neeson and Ray Fiennes, which is interesting considering it's really each of their first major roles. Ben Kingsley puts in a really solid performance as a supporting actor here. He's definitely not the focus of the movie whatsoever, but he is sort of an anchor of the movie and just a steady, calm presence throughout. And um, I can say this about him and about both of the other two performers as well. And each these are really the three lead performances, so to speak. But each of them, they really disappear into these roles, and it's easier with Fiennes and Neeson because they weren't really major box office presences or movie stars at the time. But um, I even just watched it for the first time a few days ago when the movie was nearly 30 years old, and they just totally disappear into these roles. You don't see the actors when you're watching the movie, you see the characters, which is a really good sign. Um, and I think something that's really cool is that Liam Neeson and Ray Fiennes look a lot alike, so um, there's a lot of cool things that they do in this movie to show parallels between the two characters, and even the way that they act is not super dissimilar, and there's a lot of parallels between the two guys as far as their acting styles, even. And as far as the supporting people outside of those main three, um, you know, I, I don't want to discredit any additional performances, but a lot of them just end up kind of blending together just because of the nature of how the movie's made. And I'll get into this later, but sort of a documentary style, so that a lot of it is captured as if it were real life. And I think a lot of the other supporting characters and people in the movie kind of just blend into the background, and you don't really get any other, to me, super distinct performances. You get Ray Fiennes as Maid, who has a pretty leading role as far as supporting people outside of the big three, but everybody outside of those big three main actors does good, just not, I don't think, like above and beyond. But the main three all do really solid work, and I'd say career best from both Neeson and Fiennes. And I would have given Ray Fiennes the Oscar for Best Supporting Actor instead of Tommy Lee Jones. I was just so impressed with his performance. He plays um, evil and menacing so well, but also you see that he is human and has human desires, and I think he really portrays in a very, very realistic way, like what the worst of humanity is, but not in a theatrical way, if that makes sense. Like, he's not like this overtly evil villain who is like out to destroy the world or anything, or just evil for the sake of being evil. He seems like very grounded in reality for being such an evil character, and that's almost more terrifying. And so he portrays a realistic evil, I think, so well. Oscar Schindler, played by Neeson, plays moral ambiguity super well. Also, like you really don't know where this character lies as far as his morality a lot of the time, and Neeson pulls that off really well. Getting into the writing of this movie, as far as plot goes, I think it's written pretty well and pretty solid, and you know there's actually a lot of sequences in this movie without dialogue, so from that perspective, there's not much writing from that standpoint. But Steven Zalian, I think is how you say his name. He's the one who wrote this. He's written a lot of successful screenplays. There's actually a lot of moments of levity in this movie, and I don't want to say it's comedy, but it's light moments that kind of take away from the darkness of the rest of the movie. Like there are a few moments where they're trying to I guess I don't want to say comedic relief, but moments of levity is probably the best way to put it. Where um, there's this one scene where they're trying to do an execution, and almost to comedic effect, all they have a bunch of guns that jam, and the Nazis' way of trying to fix it is almost comedic in that they just cannot get it to work. Um, there's a few other moments like that, um, but overall the writing pretty solid. I think like other aspects of the movie exceed so much that like the writing is almost an afterthought just because of the way the movie was made. And as I said a little bit earlier, I think like Spielberg was kind of aiming for like a documentary style drama. So like the writing almost doesn't even feel like it's there as much because you feel like you're watching real life, which in and of itself is a compliment to the writing. Now to get on to what I really want to dig in on, which is the direction of this movie, and as I've been hinting at throughout the video already, Spielberg went with what he wanted to call a documentary style drama, which was he was trying to portray this um, narrative drama movie as if it were a documentary because he wanted to portray these things because in real life things such as these were happening and it's based on a true story, and he does this to perfection. Um, one of the techniques he uses, he got rid of a lot of steady cameras and lenses, which are like docked cameras like on the stands, and he used a lot more like handheld camera use, which was I think very effective in portraying different angles that get you close up into the action and kind of get you immersed in what's happening, much like a documentary might, and it made it feel a lot more like footage of real life rather than necessarily um, like a dramatization or a movie. And this is going to bleed into cinematography and editing as well. So I'm not going to distinctly like call out any of these three necessarily, but I might. But it's going to bleed over. So that aspect of direction and cinematography was really good. The black and white style of cinematography with very occasional color. You can see on screen the little girl in the red dress. One of the few scenes that has color in the movie, used to good effect. Black and white, I think, adds to this theme of like stark reality of facing this harshness that the Holocaust was, and I think that adds this kind of documentary style, and that a lot of documentaries from this time frame and real life footage that we see from this time frame, like pre 1950, is in black and white. And so I think putting this movie in black and white kind of puts you back in that time frame more because I think historically we think of this time in black and white just because of that's how it was being portrayed in real life in newspapers and in film clips from the time. Um, so I really like the black and white aesthetic to it. Um, let's see here. The direction is just so dang good in this movie. Um, piggybacking off of this whole documentary style, there are a lot of explicit scenes in this movie where Spielberg will kind of show close-ups on faces of random Jews in the concentration camps, and it's not like he's trying to craft a narrative around this random Jew that he's focusing in on their face. It's that he's trying to show kind of the randomness of the Holocaust and like kind of evoke this feeling of this could happen to anybody back at that time, and like whether you were a person who was saved by Oscar Schindler or a person who was ultimately led to their death, a lot of it kind of ended up being random, and either by the grace of God you were born with being very tall and broad-shouldered so that they wouldn't send you to your death. They'd use you as a worker maybe, or unfortunately, maybe you were born with a really poor physique and then you were deemed not work essential and you'd be killed. Um, and just this way he shows random people throughout the movie interspliced, and this gets into editing too, is that um, there are a lot of scenes where they just show people's faces and they're not characters that have dialogue or anything. They're just random people who are going through the Holocaust, and it really adds to the documentary feel a lot, I think, and really immerses you much more into the movie. Um, as far as editing goes, real quick, I think it's a 3 hour 15-minute movie, and it's edited pretty well in that the pacing is very solid. I think with any 3 hour plus movie there are going to be like a few moments of lulls. I don't think that there's too many at all in this movie, and that you're engaged relatively the entire time. um, so that really speaks to the editing, I feel like. And I do think that how I spoke that there are moments of levity earlier. uh, the editing in this movie really knows when to throw those in and how to stack scenes so that you don't get too many brutal scenes back to back to back. You'll have maybe like a brutal scene, then a scene of socializing among the German higher ups, then a scene of levity, then a scene of hardship, and it really balances that flow of the narrative quite well with how it's edited. Um, Besides that, there's a little bit of music to it, not a ton, but that's interspersed well. I like that they edited the present day scenes at the end in color. I thought that that was a really good choice, and I liked how the end was edited as a whole of all the people going to Schindler's grave. Um, Cinematography wise, I like that when they had the service on the Sabbath that they put the candles in color, and then another thing I think they put in color. I may be mistaken here, but the Jews gave Schindler a ring at the end to kind of symbolize their thankfulness to him, and I think that may have been gold and may have been colored in. It may have been in black and white. I'm forgetting, but use of color really good here. As far as overall direction, again, a theme that Spielberg looks at and does really well within this movie is like moral ambiguity. In that there's a scene where Schindler says like that Ray Fiennes' character, who is the like so-called villain of this movie, he says he's not that bad of a guy. He likes women, he likes good food, he likes to drink, he likes to have a good time, and then Ben Kingsley cuts in and says, and he likes to kill people. And I think this narrative from Neeson, um, and just how he plays that scene and how Ray Fiennes plays different scenes, and um, how Spielberg sets up a lot of conversations between the two and a lot of shot reverse shot between the two, sets up this idea and this parallel that the two are, different in that one is about killing Jews and one ultimately is about saving Jews. But at the onset of the movie, they're very similar, like on the surface, and like very similar interests, and they do both like women, food, drinking, partying, having a good time. And there's this ambiguity, and there's good and evil in a lot of the different characters in here. Like Schindler isn't just straight up a hero. He's got shades of moral ambiguity in him, in that for the first hour and a half to 2 hours of the movie, he doesn't really care that much about the Jews, and he's really only protecting anybody to help him make a profit. Obviously, towards the end, that changes, but towards the beginning, it's really all about profit for him, and helping him make money. And that's a really good um, transition and motif, and I guess theme throughout the whole movie for Spielberg. And there's one or two particular scenes I want to look at or talk about, I guess. Number one is where they I guess wait, first before this I just want to say there's a lot of scenes interspliced in the movie where they just show random things happening in the concentration camp, like where they're rounding up children to take them away to another concentration camp, and then after the fact, a bunch of children have avoided that and are running to go hide in either floorboards or porta potties, and that part of the movie is done really well. And there's other parts where they're kind of showing eugenics stuff going on, where people are being measured and sized up based on their physical attributes, and they're being demoralized by being paraded around naked through the yard in front of all the guards. These are interspliced with the main Schindler narrative, and they're done really well to also make it feel like a documentary. Two scenes in particular that I want to shout out, though, and I like the direction a lot in them. There's a scene where all the children have been rounded up, as I was just saying, and are being sent off to the concentration camps, and they kind of think it's a good thing, so they're all like smiling and waving as they drive off in these trucks. And then all these mothers who have been at the moment separated from their kids realize that they're being taken away, and they all run over to try and get to the trucks. And none of they're far away, like a half a football field or more away, that they're not really going to be able to make out any of their kids as they're being driven off. But you get this sense of just panic that a parent would have of you know knowing that your kid's in there but not being able to make out where they are, and just getting really overwrought with panic about not really getting to say goodbye and probably never getting to see them again. And that scene was done really well, and it was probably one of the most emotional scenes I think for me. So I just loved the direction of that. And then one scene that's small detail, and probably not many people think about this scene, but I really like it, is the last scene that we get. Amon Garth or Goth, Ray Fiennes' character. It's after the war's ended. Um, it's after he's been tried and he's going to be hanged for war crimes against the Jews, and they kind of cut from what's going on with Schindler to this scene of him getting hanged, and it's real quick, and they just kind of say like, any last words, and he says Heil Hitler, and then they kick out a stool and he's hanged. And it's honestly, all told, the scene's about 15 seconds long, where they just cut to him on the stool about to be hanged. They ask him any last words, he says blah blah blah, and they kick out the stool and it's done with. And I think that scene works super well, and that it portrays this isn't some like larger than life super villain bad guy, like in a lot of movies where they would kind of play up this villain's end or demise theatrically, and have some big final speech or something, or a big final confrontation. His demise takes up 15 seconds of screen time about, and he kind of, I wouldn't say goes out with a whimper, but goes out relatively quietly. And I think that just plays into this whole theme of like realistic human evil. He is evil. We're glad that he's gotten his demise, but also at the same time, he's a human. It's not like he's going to take out 50 people trying to take him down while he's doing it. Like a lot of movies would be tempted to do something not like that, but very theatrical, and this movie is very grounded in how it portrays his demise, and that all plays into the documentary theme too. So overall, great direction, editing, and cinematography, all done wonderfully. To sum up, I would give the acting of this movie an A, writing an A, direction and cinematography A plus, and editing an A. And overall, I would give this movie an A plus. One of the greatest films of all time. I don't know if you could say the best Holocaust movie of all time, but I think no, without a doubt in the conversation. And I think whether you consider it the greatest Holocaust movie of all time, it's probably just up to personal preference. I, for one, think it's phenomenally made. And again, it's on Netflix if you haven't seen it. So go out and give it a watch. And that's all I got for today, guys. Hope you enjoyed the video, and I'll see you next time. Bye.